bring it over.
Thank you. Okay, so we're looking through, we've got Amelia with a mapping exercise that she's linked here. Any thoughts on this going through it? I could also read through if there isn't someone who wants to volunteer to go through her research.
I would, but my internet's very bad right now, and I'm only just looking at the issue now.
Yeah. So we've got a link to her issue where she's got a summary comment, and there has been some responses on that comment. The takeaways I see here are regarding the regions. It says there's often a way to control the view on the page, but there's a lot of variation across the products in terms of which controls are used. Sometimes it's a path component, sometimes tabs, sometimes drop down, sometimes a button group. So that's an interesting insight. We need to be able to switch views, but we have different ways of doing that. Many dashboards contain tables of data, meaning they're not just charts or visualizations. Some dashboards, but not all, have filters. Most use our standard filter component with the addition of most recent drop-down option. A small subset also uses a date range filter. Some dashboards, but not all, have data visualizations. Most of the data visualizations are charts, with area charts being the primary chart type used. Some column or line charts are also used in addition. Some dashboards include additional data visualizations, ones that serve more as a page overview, summary callout visualization. These are sometimes presented as a single stat component, sometimes using a card component, and sometimes in bulleted text. Also, if anyone has anything to say on these, jump in as I'm going through. And then all the dashboards out of the box, all the dashboards reviewed are out of the box dashboards with no ability to customize beyond filtering. Although the now deprecated metrics dashboard did allow for the creation of a custom dashboard, so there is a precedent for that in the product. Will, did you want to voice over your comment on that one?
Yeah, I think the observability team's Grafana work will allow for custom dashboards, and that's kind of why I think that other metrics dashboard that she talks about will be deprecated, because this will essentially be replacing that.
Okay.
And that is correct. They plan on also delivering specific out-of-box dashboards that match up with certain groups as well, or certain use cases.
Some set out of box, and then but we have that new tech under the hood that allows customization and could be useful in some places.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my point is, product analytics, we are not using Grafana, but we will be having a fully customizable dashboards through YAML configurations. We're in very early stages of building this right now.
Additionally, we are experimenting with a widget designer of sorts, which matches our nomenclature a little bit better, but we can at least add that to, that's a whole different topic in terms of that customizability flow, but it'll be good to just match that against what our other options are in terms of Grafana and observability solutions as well.
Yeah, so that's interesting. We've got Grafana as a way to organize or save dashboards. We've got a new YAML way to do it. And then it sounds like Dennis, yours is around widget configuration, a portion of the dashboard.
Yeah, which actually feeds into that YAML configuration. It's a more UI based approach to doing that, as opposed to just coding your widget together, which helps you like visualize the data coming out of it and making sure you're happy with it before you save to that workflow.
Okay, cool. So we know customization's big. We haven't executed it yet at GitLab in a consistent, amazing way, but that does sound like a really big theme. And then there's been a lot of tries too. Like I've been here 3 years, but there's been a few times where people try to get dashboards out and it just doesn't really take. So I hope we could align if we all jump on the same solution or similar, we could probably move us down the line a lot faster if we can get aligned on how we customize. Okay, so there's a lot of opportunity to standardize customization. For instance, we have page controls. We define a standard page control to use. If we want to have a summary or call out information on the page, we could define which component to use by default. These kinds of decisions would help improve consistency of the dashboard experience across the product. Question, is this a representative enough sample? Does the group feel we need to do more mapping?
Yeah, so I was leaning towards what Will is answering right now, but I wanted him to say because he knows statistics better than me.
I mean,
So
I haven't put those statistics to use in quite a while, but I have the books to prove it.
right.
I would recommend, looking at others beyond just, the 6 of 30. I'm sure that we've probably gotten like the bigger, themes, through Amelia's analysis, but we might identify some other things along the way that are they're relatively new.
One thing I noticed too, and maybe I missed it, but she didn't map like Grafana's point of view, which I know a lot of observability is, or maybe I missed it. Is it in there? Like, what are those items called in the Grafana world as well? That's a question I have. Or how are they aligned?
Yeah,
That
there's
might
definitely
explain.
that makes sense. I think there's some similarity is definitely with what we've already charted out as well. It'd be good, I think, just to collect like which of all these types of dashboards have these types of regions and just have it all categorized.
Could someone take that further along and do that a similar render to what Amelia did, so we have it in our pocket? And same if there's a different solution with the YAML board, how we're thinking about it, the YAML organization.
When you say Grafana, do you mean the versions of dashboards that our team is using, or do you mean generically Grafana, how Grafana works?
So I would say the ones we're currently using, but if we have that whole library at our disposal, I think it would just be interesting to see what they called those things and how it might align with ours. Just so we're in the know on that and we have an opinion on it. Does anyone want to volunteer to grab that action item on Grafana?
If I weren't going on vacation the next couple of days, I would definitely take you up on that. I mean, is this something that could be done like next week potentially? Because I might have a little bit of time.
We can also put this out just on an issue, since we have a lot of people that aren't joining the call, to see if anyone else has potentially availability. Take a look at it this week, or
if no one does. Let's
Also,
ask.
our
Yeah,
next
let's
agenda
follow up.
item. Our next agenda item deals with dates anyway, so that might help people decide.
Okay, yeah, let's figure that out after. Good points. Okay, so the next thought / suggestion, perhaps documenting the elements on dashboards currently and recommending components for the different common elements could be part of the outcome here. So that's Amelia's suggestion on that. Matej, am I saying your name right? Matej?
Matej, yeah.
Matej, do you want to have a go at that one?
I think that makes sense, but at the same time, I posted a comment on that issue where she initially posted these findings that she wrapped up here. She's reviewing what we currently have in GitLab, right? The dashboards. And I was suggesting, should we also consider, and I think that makes sense, that recommendation here in general makes sense, but should we also consider what we want to do with the dashboards in the future? Because we're quite limited at the moment what we do with the dashboards. We have a lack of consistency. We use these regions, which are mostly 100% in width, right? So there's a lack of flexibility there as well. So we need to improve how we do our dashboards. And I mean, when I say we in Plan Optimize, we're exploring what these dashboards could look like in the future. And I know product analytics have been experimenting with a fully customizable dashboard. So should we consider those things as well, so that we don't limit ourselves too much to what we already have and what we already do?
On the product side, I think we should consider it so that we have flexibility moving forward. And that might be the next phase. I do think it's important, though, to document what we currently have before we do move forward into that what could the whole world be kind of discussion. That's why also with Grafana, I kind of wanted to see what they have under the hood, because it might have a whole suite of already built components or things that match what we're eventually going to get to as a need on the GitLab side, but I don't want to be prescriptive right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that for the defining for the future?
No, I think that'll be a next step for sure. I was just checking the goals of the working group to make sure that still fell in line, but I think part of it is defining what a dashboard is and isn't, and I think that's part of the conversation. At the same time, Grafana offers a full suite of visualizations. We also use eCharts as well, which has plenty of visualizations to work with as well that we've already been using in various dashboards. So it'll be good to, yeah, definitely chart where we're at currently, but then with the different groups experimenting, kind of reconcile all of that to define what we can and can't do with dashboards, at least.
All right, from the last comment here, she's got an issue comment that she's linked to. I think it's the same one. The next step should be our first output here as a group could be descriptive. We could spell out that in GitLab, these are the elements that dashboards contain. We could also start potentially defining which components people can consider using for different sections of the dashboards. For example, for page navigation, we could recommend using X component. For summary callout information, we could recommend using Y component. We could document all of this information in pajamas. This feels like it would be a reasonable next step and potentially the outcome of this working group. Does that make sense? Does everyone align with that, or are there any other ideas? I think she's saying map current components to the regions or the needs that she outlined.
It sounds like to me we need to determine what components we're using first, document those to then know what we can recommend. We also still haven't defined what we're going to call all these things, which is another thing we kind of need to do before we start documenting it on pajamas. I feel like that the output would be a great output to have and something we should definitely do, but it feels like the step after what we need to do right now.
The naming would be the step after, or do naming then do this?
I feel like we could do the naming at the same time. We just need to know what we currently have and what we want to do to then know what we're going to call things, if that makes sense.
Okay. One thing I'd like to see too is maybe if the name isn't there yet, even just a definition, a working definition of its why it's there, what it does, and its function in the dashboard ecosystem, and then that might help us drive to the name too.
100%.
Dennis, you had the next comment there.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, I agree that these are important next steps. I just wonder if it makes sense to put in pajamas yet or hold until we have, because we want to inventory everything we have, inventory what we want to do in the future. And so I think there's a lot of changes that are going to be happening, a lot of editing happening.
Mhm.
I wonder if it makes sense to hold off on putting it into pajamas until we have kind of like a final list of, or a more complete list of here's what we have and here's what we want, and the naming of all of that and the description of what they're supposed to do in terms of functionality before we throw it into pajamas, just in the interest of like iterating quickly on it. But that's
Where would
just
be
a
the
question
best
to
place
everybody.
to store that if we did that? Like if we just started a working list, would it be like an issue description? Or should it be like a mural we can all edit? Or like what would be the best place to just sort of have like that working dictionary started?
Issue everyone has access to. That's one place. Mural, I'd be happy to. I just haven't used it, but would love to check it out. But I'm open to ideas. I just imagine if we're kind of going through like with a merge request and we're going to have to like, comment out or replace like half of it, it might get a little tricky. And I think we've all seen those, 100+ comment merge requests, which can get a little
Yes, I know.
unwieldy.
I don't think we're ready
So,
yet. I think we need to,
yeah.
I think you're right. We need
Or
to, or maybe
maybe
we
even
could
a
even
boring
have
solution like
definition
Google
issues.
Sheets or like something, I don't know, whatever we feel comfortable with. I'm not trying to suggest us go out of GitLab, but in some cases it might make sense just to kind of, really roughly shape this before we start to refine it.
I'm all for Google Sheets too, and then we could take it to issues from there if we wanted to get a rough outline. And then maybe there's like types we could start defining in issues or move just as an interim exercise.
Anyone opposed to Sheets? All right, then I guess we have our general pipeline.
Sheets to issues. And then to MR. This is just a question off the top of my head too. Jeremy, with Figma and everything with design system, are we, as for an output with this, I wrote an MR to, it would be an MR to pajamas. Is that enough? Or would we also need, would you have to start putting them into the Figma components? Or could that come later?
It kind of depends on how they're going to be used in design. Right now, anything we have has pretty low usage. So, and these are generally pretty time consuming to build and maintain. So it might be one of those things where if we need to, we need to. Otherwise, if it's in GitLab UI and we can, a designer could put in their data with properties and take a screenshot and use it, then that could be helpful too. So,
Okay.
Especially
while we're defining. I wouldn't want you to have to change Figma every day. It should be like probably the last thing. Maybe that would be like, we're done the working group. Now we could go forward.
Yeah, and for something like this, well, it kind of depends on the approach. I would leverage Figma more for maybe design specs that get rolled up into GitLab UI and then are pulled into pajamas, rather than trying to reflect a final design state. So it might be more on the exploration side, and it might get be stuff that's just artifacts that we just throw away later. But that's the other approach. Is it might be better to just use Figma for that design spec initially, and then rely on the code that as the single source of truth.
So we could use it here and there if we want to look at something or explore, but it shouldn't be the output of the working group. It would be the step beyond GitLab UI and pajamas and everything. Makes sense. Ihan, do you want to go through the next one?
Sure. Yeah, I'll quickly talk through my points. I just wanted, this is more like a FYI, that's on that issue, I've added another design for the dashboard that product analytics is busy building and the concept for it. So yeah, this is specifically for reusable dashboards. So as was previously mentioned, Plan Optimize is also thinking of using this because we're creating it as a shared component first and then implementing it specifically for product analytics. And yeah, I've mapped out the regions there. The good news is that there isn't much like differences between like all the other dashboards. We're trying to stick to what's been done as much as possible. And I think we're at a stage where one of the biggest things that we just need to pin down right now is like the nomenclature and just make sure that we're consistent across like all reusable dashboards on what we call things. But yeah, please have a look on that design and feel free to leave comments.
I don't know if Amelia called it out. I might have missed it, but is breadcrumbs a normal? I noticed that on a few of them. It's talking about a breadcrumb in the dashboard, not the GitLab breadcrumbs. Is that correct? Because we do have that as a part of our main navigation in GitLab. There's a breadcrumb at the top, a lot of pages.
Yeah, my understanding here is that this is like GitLab's breadcrumbs. That's what I added to ours. Just showing basically all the page elements, but it could be different for other cases.
I wasn't sure if there was a dashboard though that had its own type of dashboards, kind of like sometimes they'll have tabs, or sorry, their own type of breadcrumbs, kind of like tabs or other ways of navigating.
Yeah, I know Optimize had some where it like defined like different stages of your value stream. And I don't know if that's specifically called breadcrumbs though, but that's the only thing I could draw from the dashboard off of memory at least. So I don't know if anyone could clarify that.
I think in the GitLab UI, it's a steps component, I believe. That element, we don't have that breadcrumbs element that is on all pages is specific for page navigation. It shouldn't be used for internal inner component navigation.
So we might want to check with Amelia then what she intended with the charting breadcrumbs then to make sure we're all on the same page there.
I noticed with value stream, because I used to use that a fair amount too. I got confused by those steps because it felt like you had to do them in order or something. But in reality, you could define in the recipe on any one to be whatever you wanted.
Order did matter, but I don't know if that's it's supposed to be like your entire workflow technically. So like those are the stages you go through in your workflow. But you could configure it however which way you want it.
Right. Like I made the last one, technically the first one. I made my own custom one that was looking at something. So it was like, once I did that, it kind of ruined the UI's intent, I guess. But
a lot of people actually find that confusing. And we want to redesign that part completely, but we just haven't had time to pick that up. But we do know that it is a bit confusing and we need to change that. So it's more clear that these are actually steps that one follows the other. We'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, it would be cool if it could detect that I messed that up and then be like, that's actually at the front and like cool. Guide me into the right order.
That's part of the work we'll have to figure out with customizability is there's going to have to be some training wheels or guardrails to let people know that they might be confusing themselves or going out of the bounds of what we can provide.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that'll be a fun topic.
I do think that's a very specific case for that particular dashboard. I'm not sure if I guess it could be reused on other dashboards in the future, just not for the moment, I guess. A pattern like that.
Yeah. Or those definitions, like defining a stage of like going from one label to the next could be used to filter other dashboards at some point. Like maybe I called that Kristen's phase that I care about, it's a recipe, then I would
True.
have that on other dashboards and other ways to filter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They'd be like global definitions or something like that of what the whole org accepts as a specific flow, but don't want to rabbit hole on that one. So let's figure out breadcrumbs, let's figure out all those things and get them into the definition. All right, so the last section I have here is just talking through the phases that we defined last time, which was investigation, map all the paces, and then, oh, I guess we could have another one. Oh, definition. Yeah, definition of the objects. And these are not set in stone, so we could add more phases. But I would love us to just think about, given we've done, this is our third meeting, and we wanted to do about 12 weeks of meetings. Where do we want to set these dates in the future? And keeping Christmas and holidays in mind, that I know we kind of, from this point to end of December, there's going to be less.
Could we clarify the investigation part? I put a question, like we're mentioning all dashboards, but then all in CS and sales issues and Grafana, like what exactly is the all in the, particularly the like latter two items?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't think the sales and CS should be a blocker, although I do have those issues open with them. I think that the investigation of our internal product has been done. Just thinking out loud. We just defined today, though, that we wanted to look at the libraries that we have in GitLab, such as Grafana and eCharts was mentioned. So maybe we need to do some investigation on those two, and that's still a part of investigation. I think the breadcrumbs question falls under investigation too, from my standpoint, but that would be my take on it. What does everyone else think? Is there any other pieces you want to see before you get into defining, mapping or defining?
I thought we already had defined what we mean by investigation, so that's why I wrote there, what do we mean by investigation? But it looks like we don't have that properly defined yet.
Yes, that's a good point.
I think once we define what we mean by investigation, it will be easier to define the date when we want this completed by.
I was thinking the investigation meant go and get all of the things and get them in a list. So investigate the core product, which we got, how customers see it, which is in flight, and then other internal use libraries. And at least get them to a point where we know what all the objects are in a list to be mapped.
Okay, so basically what the media has done with the 6 dashboards, that would be the basis of it probably, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or is that a mix of, is investigation gathering and then map all pieces is doing what she did?
Yeah, Justin, you getting the list, I think that's the investigation. When you posted in Slack and then Amelia did map them.
Okay, so we're basically done with the first step.
But do you also want me to gather competitor type pieces as well? Like we need to look at eCharts, we need to look at Grafana, because that's what we said above too, that we want to look at Grafana at least. So
I think we should do one round of investigation on those, get them all in a list somewhere, and then the mapping could come from that. So these two can maybe have some overlap and go together as we move through these phases.
Okay. And ultimately, we're trying to be done with this in about a quarter.
Yes. So in my mind, I was thinking Jan 31st, but I think end of Feb is probably better with Christmas and holidays. Ideally 12 of these meetings would be the goal. And we've done 3.
I like to work backwards when I get a due date. So we're talking February 28th, I guess, is the end.
Yeah. And if we could do it by, yeah, if we get it done earlier than that, like mid-Feb, if we have the MR started and we're rolling, then the last bit could just be getting it merged.
We can probably gather everything by the end of December. I don't see why that would hold us up. I'm off next week, but I'll be back the week after. I'm guessing it'll be pretty quiet. So I can check into that.
So December 31st for investigation, or do we want to give ourselves to like the first week back? Or
we're off the 30th, 31st to
4th.
Saturday, so it's really the 29th. Or we could move it into January, of course.
We could say Jan 10th, which would be like our second day back, and then that just kind of gives us like one more touch point.
Okay, that works.
Okay. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention on the sales and CS issues, sales hasn't been responsive. I've got one thing back from CS, but I was gonna today go through Chorus and see if I can find these words in conversations. So looking down the list that we already have, words like dashboards, panels, I was just gonna get a count of how many times customer calls have those words in them in the last like 90 days. And that might be a way we could vet in the future. Let's say we're not sure on what to call something. If we can find them in customer calls, we could maybe also see how our customers think about them. But I won't put all my faith in Chorus, but it's just something I'm thinking of trying. I don't think we should be blocked by that side of it, by the sales and CS. We've got an end date of the 28th of Feb. We've got our investigation phase. It just, these can kind of overlap, but mapping the pieces and then getting into actually writing the definitions. I feel like if we're already starting a spreadsheet or like writing down what these things are, we're kind of building the definitions as we go, which is good.
Yeah, but definition's going to probably take the most work.
Decisions and definitions and decisions.
Yeah. So either end of January to have mapped or middle of January.
We should, with the investigation, we should have pretty much mapped almost everything. We just need to categorize what we've found more or less, don't we? So it shouldn't take too long to do the map. But as you say, the definitions is going to take a while.
Yeah.
Are there some definitions that we know will be controversial on this team or like have more discussion? And then are there some that are slam dunk? Is there a point where we'll kind of know that like we could maybe 80% we all align on? We could have like a date of alignment where we're just like, yeah, I like the way these are called. And then the important discussions would maybe happen on the last 20% where there's disagreement and we have to come to we need to like schedule these meetings to actually discuss or get through this.
I think we'll probably get a better idea of that as we're going. A lot of these are parallel efforts, and I'm sure we'll start talking about definitions as we go. And if we start going down long threads for certain things, that should be an indicator that that's going to be contentious.
Mm-hmm. These high level dates look good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we might get some time back today. let's figure out async, the DRI on going through the Grafana stuff. And I guess also eCharts was mentioned. And then I think we're close to closing out investigation. We do have one more meeting booked before a lot of people are taking holidays, which is next week. So let's see who can join on that call, but I'm sure many of us will be off, and I won't be joining December, the end of December. So I guess we can do this async, but in the absence of me, whoever's on, we should just make sure that someone records and does all the things. So I'll before I leave, I'll kind of make a Slack ask to see who could run them if anyone is planning on going. Maybe update your attendance on the calendar events, and if you aren't going to join due to holidays, just do a no on that, and then that'll just help me see too if anyone is planning to work during that time. Cool. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amelia.
Thanks,
She wasn't on, but that was great.
Thanks, Amelia.
Okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.